Hey guys, welcome to today's podcast episode. Today we're joined with Dr. Azri, Dr. Azri Zakariya. Might butcher that slightly, but thank you so much for joining today, Azri. Do you mind just giving us a quick run for who you are, what you do?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm Azri. I'm 24 years old. I have an online fitness coaching business. We've been running for 4 to 5 years now. Good team of 20, just over 20 now. And I'm recently graduated from medical school. So essentially, what I've built is probably the most time efficient approach in terms of the scaling side of things, which is why I have a strong team, very, very independent and very efficient as well. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to it. The one thing straight off the bat I had in mind, like as a big question, is with how much you've had going on over that like last 4 to 5 year period. I imagine like studying, like looking to graduate, and also pushing at like a big, like high intensity in terms of coaching. Most people, I think, would just think, oh, like it's not really possible to do both. Like, how did you find the balance to find out make that work?
Very good question. So in terms of trying to do it all, it's efficiency around doing the right things, because I think a lot of people get stuck in the weeds doing the wrong things. I certainly did. I did everything myself for years, and you kind of cap yourself in terms of not just your mental productivity efficiency, but also in terms of scaling the business itself. You can only grow so far outside of yourself until you need leverage with team members, with ads, with whatever it is to get to the next level and keep growing from there. So essentially, how I actually managed it all was a few different ways. So number one, managing myself. So the actual productivity and efficiency of the output based on what I can actually put in as well. The main thing as well is making sure that each day I knew exactly what to do, ABC. So I wasn't guessing my way through and floating around. Number two, in terms of being able to do it all, I would say when I got to a point where I was very efficient at doing specific tasks, I did get to a point where I outsourced a lot of tasks as well. And that really came down to learning as much as I could about how I can do each task best. I had mentors across the way as well. And then, of course, making sure I could actually put someone in the right place, put someone in the right seat for me to be able to actually progress to the next level. And that's where things did take off as well. Those are the main things, but I know you had some questions around more of the specifics as well, but not too sure exactly what they are.
Yeah. So one of them was like ABC stuff you mentioned at the beginning. Like you have a clear outline. Here's what I need to do. How do you decide what's the biggest priority in your coaching business, and do you plan it out the day before? How does that kind of look in some of the to-do list? And
Yeah, so I split up tasks into what needs to be done now and what I would consider a radar or background task, and then those other larger projects that can be done on a longer time frame where there's only two real things that needs to be done, but calls, close calls that needs to generate income for your business, right? So with that, that's where majority of my priorities lied. So I knew exactly how many of XYZ I need to do each day, how many, where my KPIs are at, basically. So making sure I hit those every day was the first thing on my to do list every day, anyways. But before I got into that, I did have 2 to 3 hours of radar tasks, deep work tasks before I went to uni or before I went to doing the boring stuff as well. But the main thing was actually making sure I had some undistracted time for me to be able to execute on those tasks with efficiency, and then getting into the income producing tasks, which took up the 60-70% of the other 8 hours or so I was working a day. So that was when I was doing, trying to do absolutely everything as well. So what I really did find was super, super key was making a to do list the night before as to what to do the next day. So you don't actually wake up and try and build your to do list. I see many, many people working on the wrong things for an extended period of time. So, the people that are trying to build their new website or try and get the perfect piece of content. I know people who have scaled significantly with 9 pieces of content and 100% outbound messaging, and that's it. So I've seen people get to multi six figures with just that as well. So I knew for a fact, regardless of how efficient I did get with content, that was another story, but I knew for a fact at the same time that wasn't actually the priority. I knew exactly where the priorities were. And it was sending hundreds of messages a day myself, booking as many calls as I possibly could, and then taking those calls. Everything outside of that, I spent at the beginning maximum an hour on. I was not screwing around doing anything else that wasn't unproductive, regardless of me doing it myself. But the other thing is actually making sure that what you're doing has a tangible goal and outcome to it. And I'm not saying that you should spend all morning planning out your entire day and then wasting your most productive hours just trying to plan. Because I see the value in setting goals and having direction in goals, but I also think that a lot of people do productively procrastinate around what they need to do instead of, the actions that it does take for you to be able to execute on those tasks to actually move the needle in the business itself.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's like a lot of value in that, and it sounds like it's a lot of it with most people when they think of productivity, even myself to an extent, like it would be like the shiny things, the morning routine, the cold shower, like all of that stuff. But actually, the foundational work is much more actually like doing what's going to get your business paid before anything else, and just being like hyper focused. It might not be like the thing you want to do. Like you might want to find like you might enjoy doing a graphic design or like faffing around on like websites, but just doing what actually needs to be done.
100%, right? I know I did a talk with the very specific details on how to be optimally productive at all times and everything. But at the same time, at the beginning, it was very, very simple stuff. I literally used to roll out of bed and get started with work before anything else, have a coffee and get started, really. That was my entire productivity routine. And then, you try and optimize bits and pieces, but I think a lot of people are trying to model the people at the top of the mountain instead of the people on the climb. So I 100% know that people on the climb, including myself, was not doing all this fancy stuff that they think needs to be done for them to get some sort of tangible result in the business. Them trying to put themselves in an optimal position is good, of course, is good. There's definitely efficiencies that you can get around that. But once again, that's the 5% that is needed to be done to optimize what's already working. If there's nothing already working, then I don't know what people are really trying to optimize there. But of course, there are definitely ways you can go about having a better workflow and getting more tasks done. And yes, at some point that does come to fixing yourself, right? But with that, if you stick to the basics of, waking up on time, going with the work, not getting distracted with your phone, setting up your workspace so it's clear, having the to-do list in front of you as to what to do, and then blocking all the apps on your phone, downloading an app called Opal, you can block all the tasks on your phone, block all the apps on your phone, and then setting a Pomodoro timer, 45 minute, I do 45 minutes on, and then actually my first task block is actually 1 hour, 15 minutes on, then 15 minutes off break, and then I do 45 minutes on, then 10 minutes off, then another 45 minutes on, and then I need a longer break at that point. That's around 30 minutes off. And then I try and do another 30 minutes of less intense work. So at that point, it's usually meetings for now, it is meetings for me for the rest of the day. Back then, it was med school, and then a bit of messaging in between, and then calls for the rest of the day. To be honest, everything was just calls.
Has the focus or priorities of your business now changed? It might be an interesting one. Has that changed like priorities now to versus when you were like studying in med school? Or is it still ultimately booking calls, closing calls, but just doing more of it?
I mean, yeah, 100%. It's the simple stuff done more, but of course, with the flexibility I have right now, I'm able to test more strategies. We are definitely pushing heavy with ads right now, and we're definitely pushing heavy with talent acquisition, bringing on the best people as well, trying to have a good flow of people as well, which is something I'm trying to get better at. And then, yeah, hiring, managing, is my main priority right now. Before that, it was just do as much as volume as possible on my own. Now it's making sure my team are able to efficiently do as much quality work as possible and making sure they're happy. And of course, with trainings, I'm quite intense on making sure they're on top of work and they're actually very well looked after and improving.
Amazing. And are there? I know you mentioned as well, like things, big part, like personal kind of routines was like having like your desk set up, waking up on time. Are there any non-negotiables or big priorities like for you personally that you find get you performing and working and focus at your kind of best?
Yeah, that's a very good question because I'll tell you now, at the beginning, my non negotiable thing was more based around the people I surrounded myself with and the people I let have access into my life as well. So I know it might not sound as directly
Yeah.
efficient in terms of a tangible thing that you want to hear, but at the beginning, this was probably the biggest thing that did help me grow. It was reassessing exactly who had access to me in terms of just messages, contacts, people in real life, and then making sure that was in place efficiently because I 100% knew that was one of my bottlenecks. You know, I was surrounded by people, I was surrounded by a lot of people as well. And in day to day life, I think with social media, with just messaging, that can be a big roadblock for a lot of people. So reassessing who is around you and who's actually going to be elevating you and who's bringing you down or keeping you in the same place. So that was one big thing for me. Next, non-negotiable, I guess, in terms. I'm saying this because I know for a fact that was one of the biggest things that stopped me being more and more productive in the first place, right? But the next thing I would say is, first of all, having around 6 to 7 hours of undistracted time where people couldn't, well, I wouldn't say it was about 5 to 6 hours where people couldn't access me. I would not look at social media. I would not look at any messages, wouldn't be bombarded on a Slack channel or WhatsApp messages, whatever it is. Having that so you can actually think and focus on doing the right things for you to be able to actually push the needle forward. And then not prioritizing the things that were fluff, let's say, in that hours. So once again, I'm not gonna lie, at that point I thought content was absolute fun, so I was like refused to look at anything content wise as well. But I do think there's a lot of ways you can optimize and be better with content, which we can chat about. But the other thing was I would have my caffeine intake scheduled out properly as well. I figured out exactly what would work for me. So I did have coffee in the morning, so that would be around 40 milligrams of caffeine. And then next was about 1 hour, 15 minutes after. And then the next, it was basically based on my Pomodoro schedules. And then there was about 3 in the morning. And then in the evening times as well, that was about every 2 hours split. And after that, it was going to be nicotine. So I'm just giving you some tangible bits and pieces. So I use nicotine spray, not, I don't smoke anything or anything like that. I don't think that's very productive for efficiency, but 1 milligram spray. So just in comparison, a cigarette has 18 milligrams, so 1 milligram is very much microdosing on nicotine for cognitive performance. Other non-negotiables. That was honestly those are the main things. I mean, I didn't get distracted by things I think a lot of people do get distracted by, which is why it's a little hard for me to say.
Yeah, and it sounds like because your time was so like limited anyway, you couldn't really spend 6 hours on a website design or like designing graphics because then you wouldn't like nothing would move. So it's very like meticulous. And with the people side of things, like selecting who has access to your time, what was your kind of like thought process in terms of doing that? And
Cut off just for a second there.
yeah, so with the people, I know you mentioned like having people having access to your time and like being really meticulous with that. What was your thought process in terms of like deciding how you schedule it? Was it like messaging at certain times? Was it trying to push yourself in terms of getting into more like groups of mentorships and stuff like that? Or how did you push out and find people further ahead kind of thing?
Yeah, so two things there. With people that I was basically allowing to into my life, regardless of where I was at in the business, even all the way at the beginning, saw it as exactly the same as I would as if I was doing nine figures right now, right? So I'm not would love to be doing right now, but at the same time, I was like, okay, if I was this person, would these people be in my life? So I was trying to basically see exactly how I should act as a character, as in how I should act in terms of my personal character, way, way ahead of when I should have been doing that. So everything now is just a lagging measure of how I already acted, I see. And with mentorships groups as well, this is probably the biggest thing that elevated it. It basically is a cheat code for you to shortcut the time by trading whatever it is, finances, for other people's time and knowledge, so you're not guessing your way through the process. So mentorships absolutely huge. Surrounding yourself with the right people who have the same goals, same vision, same mentality, or people ahead of you. So I had my first mentors 4 and a bit years ago, and that was probably a huge, huge factor because I also learned how to be a lot more productive and efficient around the right tasks as well. So first thing I learned as well, tracking my actual time as well, big, big thing, because then you realize you can tangibly see in front of you exactly what you're spending your time on. So very hard not to be, very hard not to be on track when you know what is actually giving you the results that you're looking for, and then what is not. And then you can see, I used to literally write down exactly where distractions came from. So this was a big thing for me actually. If ever I got distracted on a task, I would make a note of it in my time tracker because I had a timer running at all times. And then if I had stopped to that timer for any reason, I'd pause it and I literally have to write down the reason why I paused it. So it keeps you very, very accountable when you start tracking your time efficiently as well.
And I guess that's where you see it once, you see it twice, it becomes a trigger in terms of like it frustrates you if you keep like seeing it there, so it makes it less likely to keep coming up. So I know you touched on this is going to be quite like a shiny object, maybe a little bit to an extent, but I know you mentioned nicotine sprays and caffeine, like placing that around your like Pomodoro timer. Is there any supplements alongside that you'd recommend from a productivity standpoint, and how would you break that down?
Yeah, I would say like that was the base of everything I used. Next thing was I didn't talk about this much, but optimizing your gut health as well is probably one of the biggest things I think most people can do in terms of your your brain gut barrier. There's the actual productivity of your mind, let's say, can be significantly slowed down by what you're eating and any disturbances in your gut. So probiotics, prebiotics. I'm not sure exactly how effective that was. It just was quite effective for me. So making sure I had close to an empty stomach whenever I was trying to be very productive was very key. So wouldn't have solid foods in the morning all the way up until I would say 6, 7 hours deep in work, or even 8 hours actually. So call it what you want, intermittent fasting, whatever it is. I used to have whey in the morning. That was pretty much it, and a whey cake. So I microwaved it into a cake. So it tasted a bit like food, but it was light enough for me to not affect my stomach. I read something about Andrew Huberman saying that everything above 80% full does quite significantly affect your brain performance, your cognitive performance, and brain fog. Supplementation, honestly, I wouldn't say there's a lot that I went through, but L-tyrosine is going to be good. Lion's mane can help. There's blends though, which I'd probably recommend more than anything else. So Pre Plus, XRP as well, Ultramil. So there's if you look for nootropic blends and if you look for the base ingredients with L-tyrosine, lion's mane, I would say that would be enough for most people as well. And then honestly, you can get by with caffeine, and if you like nicotine as well, because everything else comes down to your actual efficiency in those tasks itself. And I wouldn't throw everything in there at once either. There wasn't once where I was like, okay, let me do all of this at once or make all these changes at once because you don't know what's working and what's not. So and then there's of course the pharmaceutical route around ADHD meds or narcolepsy meds, so modafinil. And I would say I wouldn't really go past that, to be honest. There wasn't anything else I really played around with, but you can uh, efficiently optimize in those aspects as well.
Yeah, so a big thing here is just like first having the foundation is just having the seeing your schedule, seeing how your deep work looks and how your times work, and then introducing caffeine and nicotine as a first thing around that schedule rather than trying to go too quick into things for no reason kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not saying these as recommendations. I'm saying this is what works for me. Of course, consult your physician before touching anything in terms of pharmaceutical route. But I'm telling you what works for me, and I also knew for a fact before I added any of this in, I knew what a baseline level of work looked like at my maximum productivity. So I wasn't trying to optimize something that didn't already work. Just like with anything, there's nothing that you can really stack on there that's going to boost some crazy performance in any area without you actually having direction in what's working already. Everything else is to get your baseline of work rate higher. So I already knew I could do 8 to 10 hours of solid work with reasonable efficiency for the first 6 to 7 hours every day for every single day of the week. And then when you throw in stuff which is pharmaceutical or supplementation, whatever it is, then that literally just extended that to 10 to 12 hours to 14 hours some days, where the last 2, 3 hours were more efficient than it would have been without. So all it really did for me was make the work feel good for me to be able to do it for longer with a slightly higher energy level or higher energy output, and in the last 4 to 5 hours or so, I would say.
And a really good one on that I had was, have you found from your like experience with from a work perspective, there to be like a point where it becomes like diminishing in terms of like you work longer hours, work drops off, and how do you optimize it? I know people talk about burnout, like losing focus. Like, is there signs, or do you just need to experience it once, and then you kind of know like what your threshold is?
Yeah, so there's, a big idea of working hard over working smart, working hard, whatever it is, right? If you, I don't know if, so Charlie recommended the book, Working Backwards, Jeff Bezos' book. There was a company value or company statement where they said something around the lines of, if you work at Amazon, you can, this was in the beginning days when they had 20 staff, you can either work hard, well, if you're coming in, you can either work hard, work smart, or work long. But if you're working at Amazon, you can't do only two of those three. So it's like everyone does know that they need to work hard and they need to work smart, but everyone tries to shoot into the let's try and work smart without building enough leverage around tasks that need to be done before they move on to, let's say, high leverage tasks where it's thinking, where it's taking more rest and efficiency. So at the beginning, I 100% think that people don't actually have an idea of what hard work looks like. I got very, I got very accustomed to it because, of course, I had medical, and that was already something that was quite difficult. Adding this on was more pushing past self-limited beliefs as to what I could do. But then I definitely think there is um, a barrier that needs to be pushed for most people to set their baseline of work rate higher, because a lot of people feel like they're doing a lot of work or feel like they're working hard, but at the same time, their biggest resource is still time, and their highest leverage task is still doing the nitty gritty of what needs to be done inside the business before they remove themselves or try and scale up. So at that point, of course, there is going to be stages of burnout as well um with what I experienced as well. But at the same time, I was doing stupid hours because I liked it, and then I didn't efficiently take breaks. So Corby mentioned that, I remember a mentor from our business mentorship as well, rest in peace. And he did mention that you have to treat it like you're an athlete as well. And of course, when you're an athlete, athletes do rest regardless of how hard they work within the time that they need. And then with business, it's only the only entrepreneurship, whatever it is, it's probably one of the only spaces where we no one does rest as much as they need to as well. So, I got to stages where I can tell you very tangibly, because I tracked all of this as well. It was the days where I had sub 6 hours of sleep, two days in a row where I had over 12-hour work days, where the third day after that was significantly less productive, and then that repeating over 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, was when I would consider myself getting to a day or a few days of like actually feeling burnt out, where I could consistently not produce. But of course, I got there because I found out exactly how to figure that out as well from doing the work, really. So
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting. Someone I heard it somewhere, and it's like if you have those beliefs around like hard, working is meant to be really hard, then you probably just work really hard. And like, if you work really hard on the wrong things, you're still not gonna push forward. So you kind of like you find it out by just doing more of it. Um, what were you doing going into like the work side of things? But what were you doing before online coaching? I know you've touched on that a little bit before, but what kind of like businesses and kind of stuff were you doing before that?
yeah, so I was in the trading space. I mean, that was something I was heavily in, technically still in. Um, Called a big exit previous bull run, then just stacked up in the bear. So that was I was actually day trade. Well, not day trading, I was swing trading. So that was a lot of research where I built up a lot of my, I would say, character traits in terms of what's helped me within the business itself, around thoughts around money and the actual risk reward side of things as well. So that was one thing I did do, but of course I did play around with what everyone does play around with, the low ticket offers, the ebooks, this and that. Um, there's only so much you can do with that unless you're an extremely skilled marketer. And at the beginning, there's I don't think most people are in a very, very good position to scale that up as a business, because it requires a high level of skill sets, which I developed with high ticket before any of well, developed with high ticket faster than I would have ever done with a low ticket offer or these ebooks or whatever it is.
And on the trading side of things, what were the characteristics you picked up that you still have that really helped you now?
Yeah, so first thing is fear around investing, fear around putting collateral on the line to learn. So that was a big thing because, for example, let's use ads for an example, right? There's no way that you're profitable day one with ads. And with trading, you have direct, tangible uh, outcomes and results from what you're actually putting on the line as well. So it's one of those things where you get very comfortable with investing to learn. So when you start investing to learn, and you know that you only need to learn one thing for this to be worth it, and you only need to put this much risk on the line, and you can afford to lose this much for the lesson, then you do it again and again and again. And then of course that carried on into the business space as well. And of course the other thing is fear. So you already know that there's going to be ups and downs. You already know that there's going to be days where it's not profitable, or you already know that it's going to be slow at times or very, very difficult at times, but the outcome, the actual net result of that is always worth it, because all you need to do is stick around. The people that fail in the trading space are the people that quit because they lost a certain amount, they give up, they realize that this isn't for them or whatever it is. The same with business, like you can expect nothing for a long period of time, but as long as you stick with it, you're going to come out the other end profitable, and you're also going to learn a lot of lessons on the way, the character traits that it takes, the skill sets that you need, the beliefs for you to actually go further and further in that space as well. So there's a lot of beliefs that came around trading, and reading those books I can see are very tangibly applicable to the business space as well, looking back. But it was a very interesting learning process, I would say.
And yeah, I guess with that side of things, you mentioned like doing it for a like being around, like actually playing kind of coaching and business to to keep playing the game rather than like make 10K a month or like or 100K a month or whatever. Like you actually just do it because you want to keep showing up. And was that kind of like the thought process? I'm just going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep turning up. I'm going to keep like sending DMs, like infinite
100%.
kind of thing, and just enjoying it.
Yeah, like at the beginning, I'll tell you now, I didn't even know what I was making for a long period of time. I just knew what I was closing, and it was just those dopamine hits from closing that I found very, very satisfying, I guess, and I wanted it again and again. And then, regardless, it was definitely about playing, because at some point you realize that none of this actually matters as much as you think in terms of the outcome itself, and it's the actual process, the joy that you derive from the process, the fulfillment that actually drives growth further. Because if anyone can stick to something and expand the time horizon which they expect the outcome, they will 100% be successful, because on a long enough time horizon, it is unlikely for you to be successful with enough volume of input. It's very unlikely. If I told someone that all they needed to do to lose weight was eat this many less calories each day across 3-4 weeks, and then they realize that, 1 week down the line they haven't seen the results, then they give up and they decide that this isn't for them, or they're doing the wrong thing, or they need to find a new strategy. Regardless of what they do, they're going to be on an up and down cycle forever or quit. But if they expanded that time horizon to 4 weeks, then they would have seen the results, right? But it's the same thing with the business game as well. But people take a very long time to figure that out, I feel, because everyone wants the quick fixes. It's what's marketed out there, right? It's how the whole business space is marketed, with a lot of people online who are very, very successful in a short period of time. But you have to realize that's like the 0.1% of people in the business space. The other 99.9% have the years in the game, as in they've been playing for 5, 10, 15 years plus. And of course, they can do extremely well with enough volume in a shorter period of time as well. But at the beginning, it's more the expectations instead of the outcome. I feel that it's going to be a lot easier for most people if they realize that what they're doing is something that's going to be giving them the outcome they want at some point. But if they enjoy exactly what task they're doing, and realize what they don't enjoy, and realize that the things that they don't like doing is what's actually building the character and building the skill sets for them to be able to do only the things that they like doing at a certain point, and they just have to stick with it with the volume for a long enough period of time, then they'll get a lot further. And then, of course, you can talk about delegating outsource and stuff that you don't like. But I think a lot of people get very quick in terms of trying to get rid of things that they don't like before getting good at that as well. And, sometimes that might be the best move. For me, I just wanted to be good at all of the things before I was getting rid of that. Maybe one of the things that slowed down my growth at the beginning, if I outsourced earlier stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, maybe that was probably one of the biggest bottlenecks at the time as well.
And it's like that meme thing with the picture of the guy mining with the gold. It comes to mind. It's like you don't know how close you are. Like that's probably the hardest bit sometimes at the beginning. How close you are but you just need to, like, if you anchor yourself maybe more towards enjoying to play the game, and then anchor towards, like, even in the gym you show up with that, even if you don't enjoy, you still show up, and it builds resilience. How big is your team now? Like, what does that your team currently look like?
Yeah, so we have right. That's a good question. So because it's moving around a lot, so we have 5 people in Legion. We have two. Actually, right now only 2 closers we're bringing on. We need to bring on more, but they're performing very very well. And I actually jumped back into a bit of sales because I want to train my team a bit more. We have 5 coaches. We have 3 people around content. 4 people around content. We have the standard people as well, admin, a few admin people. We have finance people. We have, uh, and in those roles as well, in lead gen, in coaching, managers within them as well. And then we have email marketing guys just come in, and one other person who I'm trying to think of, but I need to look at my list of people, my org chart, before I tell you. So yeah, that's roughly what it looks like right now, but we definitely need to expand right now. We need more flow basically at this point.
How do you manage all of that? Like, all of those people?
Yeah, so right, I'll tell you now, I wasn't managing very well at the beginning when the team started growing, and I was trying to do every single thing in the weeds. But now I'm trying to manage directly only 6 people at a time, and then they manage the people below them as well. And when I say below them, on the same team as them, there's no one below each other in any aspect. But I say in terms of an org chart, directly below them. But the main thing as well is actually caring about your people. So I feel I have a reasonable amount of respect within my team as well, because I'm not asking them to do things that I wouldn't do myself. So they look up to me in terms of me being a beacon of level of work rate, let's say, that they can aspire towards and improve on daily as well. Because I've done everything in the business, and I've done everything in the business very well. So they know that they can look to me for answers in terms of questions, in terms of how to manage their own people within their departments as well. And in terms of character itself, they don't see me as someone who's just sitting back on a chair, just waiting for things to be done and not doing things. I'm always asking them, what can we be doing better? What can I be doing better to help you in your role? So whether that's, pushing out more content, going aggressive with more content, is that going to help your lead gen processes? Is it now, do you want me to review exactly what conversations you're doing? Do you want me to review the scripts? We do this so often on a very consistent basis, and I give them feedback on a very consistent basis. We have a very tight feedback loop for every single action in the business as well, that they aren't ever lost in that process. And me managing that doesn't become difficult when they're doing. I've delegated things quite well in terms of even tracking and the efficiencies around that, so they know what the outcomes of the work that they're putting in is, but they also know exactly what to improve on. So, when we do sales call reviews, we do that very often. And when we meet in terms of team meetings, everyone already knows what they should be doing, what they're working towards, what they're going to be working towards next time, what kind of targets we're setting out, what we're expecting. So when there is a very tight community within the team as well, and everyone's actually helping each other, it doesn't become that difficult to manage. Of course, it is very stressful and it took a long time to do. But I guess building character as a leader is more important than anything else in terms of managing for it to be efficient.
Yeah, and it's that thing you say and you do, like, you have a huge conviction in terms of, like, I've done it and I keep doing it, and I'll keep you sound like you keep going back to do, like, the sales and stuff like that. So it's not like you're outsourcing stuff, you don't know how it works, or, like, that's, I think that's when a lot of stress and problems actually come in when outsourcing.
Yeah, 100%. So like, I will have them screen share. I will do like an hour or two of messages myself so they know exactly what a perfect block of time with work looks like. They know what a perfect how to actually go about objection handling very well. I'll jump on jump on the calls with my colleagues as well. So they're not ever guessing or feeling lost and not realizing why they can't do the same level of work, or why they can't actually close this much, or why they can't handle this objection, or whatever it is. So they're never actually lost, I would say. Oh, I'd like to think so, right? Or I would like to think that I'm as open in terms of communication within my team so they can reach out to me and not feel intimidated or whatever it is, and they can speak as much as they need to and give their ideas on how to improve in the business. So I'm always asking for feedback from the team itself so they help me help them, basically. So because when I shifted my perspective to how can I make my team as successful as they can possibly be, and how can, instead of, I'm trying to make as much money as possible for myself. When I shifted that, then I went very heavy into investing within the business itself. So, we started ramping up ads because we knew that, this would help, and this is the tangible outcome from what we've tracked, and this is what's working, this is what we need to do more of. Then it's very easy for me to be like, you know what, why isn't this being done to the level of efficiency that it should be done? And what can we do to make this better next time? Or what can we do to be a bit more efficient and productive next time? How can we all do as well as we can? And how can we all progress overall? So essentially, not sure if that answers your question, actually. I forgot what that
Yes,
was.
yeah, no, no, yes, is spot on because Charlie always says that as well. Like I find is like the problem is like if you go like, oh, like my team's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're like rubbish, and then like for example, and it's like that doesn't give you like a thing of fixing. Whereas like you say, if you've got this, like if you always say it's my responsibility, you kind of have like all the control to fix stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I think it is my responsibility. It's 100% my responsibility. If someone doesn't know what they're doing, it's my fault. And, if you've given clear feedback and you have tight feedback loops, as we do, it's also very easy for me to be like, you know what, we've had feedback on this, and you know exactly what it is that needs to be done. What do you feel is the roadblock here? And if that's a roadblock that's been underperformed consistently, then it was the wrong person that should have been in that seat. So then you can look at, bringing in new members, getting rid of current members as well. And, that's, I've hired and fired over 50, 150, 60 people now, right? So, actually more is, that's a lot more, actually. It's quite close to 100. So, yeah, no, I know what good team members look like, and I can tell very far out who they're going to be as well. But at the same time, there's some people you never know, actually, and they just absolutely smash it in the role, whatever it is you'd never expect it. But when it comes down to it as well, when you have clear data that's being tracked as well, it's not that difficult for me to be like, okay, this is what's working, this isn't what's working. Everything else is around making sure that your team are as good as they can be mentally and in terms of performance as well, and they're actually feeling good. So that's a big thing. Company culture is, I feel, a big thing for us.
And have you had it where you've had like an initial onboarding or like an initial interview with someone and you're like, oh, like I'm like 50-50 on this person, or like he might be good. Have they ever like turned out to be, or like even if they've started and it's been like okay, have you ever had someone like that and they've just like skyrocketed and become like an A player or
100%, yeah. We've had some hires which I would be like, oof, I'm not even sure if should have hired them in the first place, to be honest. Regardless of how many Bloom videos, interviews, or whatever it is that you've got from them. And yeah, no, they've absolutely smashed it. And I think right at the beginning when you don't actually have as much resource to hire with as much leverage as you would like to. At the beginning, you're trying to bring on, let's say, C players and turn them into B players, right? Instead of um, just hiring out A players from the start or getting B players to A players kind of thing. And at the beginning, it was just a lot more work on my end in terms of going heavy on training, heavy on management for them to become the best, right? And then maybe it was a mistake at the start, but at the beginning that worked for me. Like, we've had people stay on for 2 3 years um, who needed a lot of training, but are doing absolutely incredible now and love their role and absolutely um, would still go above and beyond within the company as well. So I think that's a difficult one to answer as well because it's such a wide range. But at the same time, I do fire very fast as well if I'm very clear from the outset that this isn't the right person. So it's both ways, to be honest. So it's that highest low fire fast kind of situation. At the beginning, I was just hiring fast, unfortunately. So it's just we needed bodies more than anything. But now it's of course the other way around.
And when do you, now looking back on it, like if you could give yourself like the advice or the snapshot, like with hiring, when would you say is the time in your business to delegate, and what do you actually look at delegating?
Yeah, it depends on the role. So if we're talking fitness coaching, I would say fulfillment's the first thing you get rid of regardless, right? That's the coaching side of things. So that's, let's be honest, like the coach, the PC, whatever it is the easiest hire that you can make as well because the actual fulfillment side of things isn't that difficult. So it's basically just having clear SOPs and that's it. Because anyone with a base level of fitness knowledge can, let's say, for weight loss, get someone from A to B, and then picking the right people. Luckily, I had a very good network. I was in the fitness space, so I was able to hire within my network. So that's the first thing. Next thing for me was DM setting. So got rid of that quite quickly as well. Not quickly, sorry. It took a while to get rid of, but I got out of that. But I always tried to keep a foot in because that is technically part of the sales process, and I think sales is the last thing you should technically get rid of, right? And of course, sales calls itself was the last thing I did get rid of, but yeah, that was that, and then getting a VA in, that was very very much productive, and then that's what I tried to scale. So I saw it as there's a few ways you can scale in terms of lead generation, in terms of volume. You can either scale with ads, and or you can hope that your organic content continues to keep growing and growing. And then, of course, I did at that point. I was pushing heavy into organic, so we didn't touch ads for the first few, like even since for the till like the last 6 months, I would say, because we tried to scale with DM setters. So that's when I just brought in more and more and more people, found the best of the best within those people, and still something I do. So VAs for setting as well. Next thing, admin, finance admin, that stuff. That's just repeatable, low skill tasks, I would say. And then what was it next that I got rid of? Of course, content editing at some point. I did get rid of at a later stage because it was just something I was good at and I was good at researching, so it took a bit longer to get rid of that. And of course, the last thing is sales. So I don't think a lot of people should get rid of sales early on either. I think that's one of the things that, of course, is the highest leverage task for most people. And then it's only after that. I don't think people should really ever get rid of sales management. That's, I mean, not ever, but like it should be a very, very later stages. I know, for example, Cole Gordon, I don't think he got rid of it until he was doing like 20 mil a year. Or so, of course, he has a larger ticket offer, but the sales side of things is definitely one of the last things I would say. But probably one of the things that brought back my freedom the most, though, because that was when you feel like when you're not tied to a calendar for the rest of your life, it feels very free. So
Yeah, and it's getting to that kind of like, a lot of people look at it and they'll say, "Oh, it's the dream outcome is having it run. Calls get booked, calls get closed," and then but imagine on behind the curtain, it's like loads of fires that are constantly like going off and like stuff that always need
I
fixing.
I always say it's more work before it's less work. It's never a case of, you get rid of this thing and then that's it, you never look at it again. In fact, it should be the opposite. You should be more on top of your people when they're coming in. You should be more heavier in training. So it's that initial upfront work that needs to be getting to them to a certain level before you can kind of step back and then really focus on the next hires or whatever it is that's going to um, build the business further. So I think it's never a case of the business, regardless, right? Okay, yes, I can take a lot of time off right now, and we'll be fine. But yeah, it's never a case of you completely stepping out. I don't think that is how it actually works for most people, anyways. It's a service-based business. It's a digital service business. It's not like a piece of software or a product or anything. So yeah, I think it is definitely a matter of making sure the right people are in the right place and they have absolutely um, the best of training that you can possibly provide based on your skill sets as well.
Amazing. And then the last kind of questions I had was more towards, I think it's going to be like like what online coaches often have is questions around is you have a you've got a big audience online. Um, was there a like method to your madness in terms of growing an audience? Was there any like steps you took towards it, or was it just or was it just a byproduct of you showing up consistently and researching? And
I would say research more than anything else is a big one, but of course the volume is able to be tested a lot more on TikTok. So TikTok, it has a low incubation time period, well, zero incubation time period, so anyone can have their content judged individually without an audience on TikTok. So posting consistently with volume on there is very good, and then figuring out like exactly what times are best, and then what sort of content does best for your audience or niche. I don't think people, honestly, with most people with a smaller audience, I don't think they have a niche. Like their audience is too small for there to be a defined niche until they start growing. Because you'll very quickly realize, right? You start making content about a specific thing, this. For example, me was like, that the whole gym fitness space, and then it went. You realize the weight loss stuff actually does well and takes off. You double, triple down on that, then 95% of your audience is actually weight loss instead of whatever you started out with. So I also think, by the way, weight loss is a better audience than contest prep or building muscle or anything like that, because especially in the high ticket space, you're speaking to people it's easier to speak to people who are older. There's very few or people in their 40s, 50s, 60s who are really trying to build muscle. And in fact, I think that does push people away from the actual offer itself, because they're looking at you as the person that they're aspiring to be as well. So when you start pushing the building muscle, competing side of things a lot, I think it does push people away from your audience. The next thing is, of course, with testing as well, basically retesting the hook as many times as you can, testing the same piece of content, different hooks again and again and again, and then finding out what works. You only need 1, 2, 3 pieces of content that take off for you to be able to know exactly how to scale up further from there. And then, of course, looking at other people's content that's actually done well. So you can literally filter out by like count who's done well on TikTok itself, finding those pieces of content, replicating it with your own twists, with your own ideas, and then remaking that, and then doing that again and again. I think a lot of people push into stuff that doesn't matter at the beginning with trying to just post, I'm trying to post 1 time a day, every day, and that's all I need to do to grow. It's like that whole Gary Vee mentality only works across a certain period of time when you know what you're doing as well. I think people are doing that blindly and just trying to get the best camera, best quality, best editors without figuring out that, what works is what's already done well in your niche or what's already done well in that space. So if people do try and double, triple down on what's already taken off, by literally filtering out on TikTok a good search engine or YouTube Shorts, whatever it is, finding what's done well, then remaking that and then testing different hooks, see what does do well, and then do that with volume instead of try and recreate the wheel every single day with volume, hoping something takes off very, very difficult, I would say. You can, of course, do that. There are people that have done that, of course. But I think the originality comes with time once you've actually built your audience and know what works. Then you can really start pushing your own ideas, testing, whatever it is. But at the beginning, it's around optimization, I would say, with, of course, optimization with volume as well. So
Yeah, and you mentioned volume. Like, what does volume look like in terms of, is it 2 a day, 3 a day on TikTok, or does it just vary?
at the beginning, I was doing like 4 to 6 posts a day, I remember, on TikTok. When I say 4 to 6 posts, like two, three of them would be 5, 6 second videos, and one of them would be a repost from before, because on TikTok you can repost and it'll do well again. And then maybe one or two new pieces of content, which, keep in mind, I wouldn't spend more than an hour or two a week on content anyways. So it was like, how much can I batch in at one point based on what's already worked? One of those pieces of content out of, let's say, 20, 30 pieces a week on TikTok is definitely going to do well. And then you base your next week's piece, let's say it's going to be more than one, it's going to be two or three, right? You base your next pieces of content all on that 2, 3 pieces of content, and then just on exactly that, and you do it again and again. So right now, honestly, we haven't been touching TikTok much at all for the past like 6 months or so. Been pushing heavier into Instagram and then trying to leverage that because it's what works, and we're just doing more of what works as always. And then we're just reposting everything into YouTube Shorts and Snapchat and everything else. So, but yeah, with content, there's only so much that can do well. So it's like if you find out what does well for you, then you just double triple down on that.
Yeah, and I think that's where like people don't often see it in terms of like that it'll be more like, oh, like I post content but it doesn't get any engagement or it doesn't get any views, and it's often like you just need to like go back and actually see what does well rather than trying to like come up with new ideas all the time.
Exactly. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's not difficult to find out, what you think you will like to remake from what's done well. So it's because there's only so much stuff that's gone viral or done well. At the beginning, I think people try to push way too hard into just giving value, just having the best quality, just having the best edits, and this and that, without realizing that, if you just look at what's done well and remake that instead of spending all your time on trying to, um, you know, try some new strategies around what works, what you feel like you want to do, then they would actually gain a lot more traction, because you can start doing what you feel like you want to do after you build the audience, kind of thing. But at the beginning, like all the value and stuff that you're trying to provide, no one's going to see it. So it's like at the beginning, just get the attention in first.
Yeah, and so much of this is like it keeps coming back down to like push your ego aside and like don't do like what you feel like doing, but do what needs to be done and just keep doing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And with with um with your stuff, you built up the audience, and then actually getting people was the next like logical thing, like just spending loads of time in the DMs, getting people on calls, just a typical process to get those, turning those into clients, or did you do anything different to turn your
Um,
followers into?
As in, okay, so in terms of conversion, so we'd look at a few places. So yeah, we 100% scaled through manual outbound into DMs. So that was the keystone for everything that we did, actually. So yeah, so story views, poll votes, followers, likes, comments, everything at the beginning. At the beginning, I scaled to, I don't think I talked about this a lot, but I scaled to reasonable numbers, like well above the 10, 15 came off with no followers as well, right? I had maybe 2,000 followers at the beginning for the first 2 years or so. And when I say like we nailed down manual outbound into DMs, well, I nailed down myself actually into very, very tight, like actual, when I say efficiency, it's more around finding out exactly what works as well. So when we're saying, just messaging people, It's like, how many times have we tested that first message, and how many different variations have we done of that for us to know that this works or this doesn't? Because I think a lot of people just try and do the same cringy pitch straight out the out the gate, or start talking about programs and this and that, when it should be at the beginning trying to test what conversational lead-in message does work well, and then retesting that again and again with volume. And I did this to cold people, followers, not to warm followers, to cold audiences as well. So into hashtags, other people's phone, whatever it is, for 2 years actually, and did very well, because all I knew I needed to do was actually build a conversational conversation, basically get a reply to begin with, and testing what your conversion rate for each message actually looks like. And then you actually look into the end flow itself. There's a lot of messages that we know work well or hasn't worked well, and then we did that again and again and again. So essentially, when I say we, I should stop saying we. I tested that again and again. So in the beginning, 100%, it was just reaching out to as many people as possible, and I set targets for myself, made it more like a game as well. I have to do this amount of minimum. If I don't, then can't do the next task. I just have to keep doing this until I do this number, and then and then if you figure out exactly what works, we're booked into triage calls and then sales calls. So building is at the beginning when you are reaching out to cold audiences as well. It's very difficult, of course, because the amount of touch points are a lot lower when they haven't seen your content, they haven't been following you. I think that's where content makes it easier as well. The audience makes it easier. They have a bit more authority, higher reply rate, higher conversions into calls as well, because of the content. They're a lot more warm, they're a lot more bought into your brand as well. So I think that's a big thing. So that helps, of course, heavily with ads. Wouldn't have thought of running ads at the beginning with no audience really, or no real good content for them to be converting off of as well. So essentially that's what worked for me, I would say.
Yeah, amazing. And that's where, like, I'm guessing the trading side of things and the data collection is super handy. Last question here. So wrapping up. So 4 or 5 years ago, you were kind of first getting into this. What's one lesson, with all the hindsight you've got now, and all the, like, you've seen the picture and the journey, what's one lesson you'd kind of give yourself from back then?
I would say the biggest lesson is to expect the volume to be difficult, but also try and push as hard into learning as possible at the beginning. Do absolutely everything that you can to surround yourself with people ahead of you that want you to do well. There are a lot of people ahead of you that don't want you to do well as well, and aren't actually invested or interested in your growth. So both sides are very important to actually be aware of, because it's the lack of awareness around the people you're around, and also the people that are going to help you grow versus people who are not, that I think stops people heavily in the beginning. And then, of course, making sure that you're able to tell yourself that I can do this for a long period of time without expecting an outcome, and be okay with it. Because if that isn't in place at the beginning, then regardless of how fast or how hard you go at the beginning, you'll only get so far. So it's being able to do the hard work and enjoy it, even if you're not enjoying it, telling yourself that you're enjoying it, for you to be able to actually get the outcome that you're looking for at a certain period of time.
Where can people find you, as if they want to watch the content, if they want to just stick around for the journey?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Azri.Zakariya, AZRI.ZAKARIYA. And then YouTube, we're going for a bit of a push into as well. Podcast stuff as well on there. So that's just my name again, AZRI Zakariya.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for jumping on and giving so much value and so much kind of insights in what it takes to achieve huge things.
Oh, good. Thanks for having me on.